y'all, I'm Ellen. We've been super inspired by our journeys of self-healing and discovery.
And I'm Sam, and we want to share our experiences with you to help you get curious about yourself, reconnect, and get intentional about your life so you know what makes you happy.
Welcome to Woo New, the podcast. We're so excited today to talk to Caris Reid, who has been a tarot reader for us since the beginning. I feel like when Sam and I left our careers, we went on a trip to Joshua Tree, and it was almost kind of like a vision quest trip where we were outlining our goals for this company that we were creating that became Daughters, but also our personal goals and what we wanted to get out of our lives now that we had this sort of like reset. And in that trip in Joshua Tree, we were able to meet with Caris, and that was super rad to actually share a tarot reading together. And it really was the perfect way to kind of, set off our journey in creating Daughters.
Yeah, she's been such an incredible part of this sort of adventure we've been on. She's, we've been doing readings with her every, 3 or 4 months. And so, some of them have been together, some of them have been alone, but it's been such a pivotal check-in for me to sit down with her. And, she's just like such an incredible person, and she's like so beautiful. Her soul is like a little ray of sunshine,
Super intuitive.
Yeah, and I always look forward to meeting with her, even though I will admittedly say my first few readings were kind of rough, but I was in a rough place. They weren't like predicting bad things, but tarot shows you sort of where your shadows are and the things that you really need to focus on trying to improve.
Yeah, actually, I think that's a really good way of saying it. It's like it forces you to look at things about yourself that you may not have been super upfront with yourself about.
Yes.
And so it's kind of hard to hide from those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And definitely having you in my first few readings, kept me honest. There were very specific things that I was told I should spend time on, and I was like, okay, definitely gonna have to do that.
Yeah, and it was just really cool just to even see, just because sky was the limit, and it was almost like we had a blank page in front of us to create whatever the hell we wanted to create at that moment. And so it's both exciting, but it's also extremely scary to be at that point where there's nothing on the page yet. So,
oh my god, I was sweating bullets.
So yeah, this reading, that very first reading back in, May of 2018.
Yeah.
Was, I feel like, kind of a life-changing event, or something that really set us off on this course.
Yeah, it was really the first spiritual piece of our sort of mind-body enlightenment, if you will.
Part of our journey. Yeah. Prior to that experience, I don't think I had only had one other tarot reading experience, which was also with Caris, the November before, and I don't think I saw it nearly as a spiritual kind of modality, or I actually don't know what I saw it as. It seemed almost kind of I don't know. I didn't think of it as my spirit guides talking to me, or divination or anything.
And you know what? Kudos to Caris for reading us that well and knowing how far she could get into that stuff, so that we would still resonate at that point. You know, she really met us where we were at. Yeah. Because the conversations that we have with her now are much different.
Oh my God.
Yeah, she's so intuitive, and she's really, really incredible and so gifted at just sort of being really honest about what she's getting from the cards and what the spreads mean, but in a really sort of proactive, empathetic way.
Yeah.
Without leaning into any quote-unquote future telling.
Exactly. The reason why we're so excited to talk to you is because you're at the very, very beginning of our journey, and then even before we decided to quit our jobs and start Daughters and stuff, I remember seeing you. This was the very first time. You were literally my first ever tarot reading.
Oh, amazing.
Ever in my life. And it was in Joshua Tree, and I was with my husband, and we were there on a vacation. And I think in that one tarot reading, it was November 2017, I decided after that reading that I needed to leave my job and do this thing.
Oh, getting goosebumps. Wow.
Yeah.
I know, me too.
Yeah. It was so pivotal. And, you know, I went into that reading feeling so, you know, just, oh, it's just going to be a fun, light thing that we can do together, you know? And I think afterwards, I just realized, I think at that moment, just how powerful tarot is and how illuminating it could be, you know? And it's not that you gave me any of the answers. It just, the reading really showed me I have these choices I can make. And if I make, you know, the choice to leave my work and kind of take the brave road, all these things could potentially happen, you know?
Yeah.
And it really came from the tarot reading, which,
Oh, wow.
you know, has been awesome. And so, like, I feel like with the two of us, we started this journey with, you know, a tarot reading as well back in Joshua Tree, but we've been seeing you, every 3 or 4 months or something, and it's been such an awesome, like, check-in point every 3 or 4 months to just, I don't know, regroup, see where we're at, and actually see the process of the growth sort of laid out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I love hearing that story. I mean, that's so rewarding for me to hear that kind of ripple effect that it had. And I always hope with my clients that ultimately there's something about the process of tarot and that introspection and even just the decision to hold that space before the cards even open up, just to be like, I'm going to take an hour of my time to really sort of like gaze inward and really understand where I am in the here and now. I mean, I think that's such a profound act to do that. And I really always hope that, like, if nothing else, that they'll gain some sort of clarity and just sort of like, you know, it's almost like if everything feels fuzzy, it's like taking the camera into focus. But I mean, that was actually, I mean, I remember that reading very well because that was actually one of I've been studying tarot for years, but that was actually one of my first readings. I would say it was in like the first 5 readings I gave to a stranger.
Oh, wow.
Because before that, I'd only been doing, it was very private for me, and I'd only been doing it for friends. And so we were kind of meeting each other in this beautiful moment of vulnerability. Like, you had never had your cards read. You didn't really know what the experience was. And whereas I had been reading cards, I was still very new to reading it to others. So I think we were probably similar in this place of vulnerability.
Yeah.
But one of the things I love so much about reading both of your cards is that, you know, I can only give as much as somebody lets me in a reading, because it's such an energetic exchange. And the more open somebody is and the more energetically open they are, the more I'm able to tap in. And so it's really, I really see it as being, it's not like a one-sided process. It's really about the connection between two energies. And then the tarot being this thing where the information just kind of has almost like a playground to express itself.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's special
really
to hear.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's super cool. I very much, I mean, in the same way that you vibe with different people, I feel like it's that way with the tarot reader as well. You're totally right. It's not a one-way thing. And I feel like I've seen 2 others, I guess, in my journey. You've probably seen like a few others as well.
I actually have not. I have had other readings done before in the past, before we started this whole journey, but I haven't seen anybody else since this journey. But I think for me, because it is such a personal like exchange of energy, and it is sort of an evolution, right? And since we've been doing regular check-ins with you, for me, it's like I get the most value out of that because you know us, and you sort of, even though you're really channeling and everything is sort of coming from what we bring to the table at every individual reading, like there's still like a through line where we can sort of check in on not just like, okay, what's going on introspectively, what are going to be the challenges that I want to be aware of, but sort of where we've come from in at least the recent past to even acknowledge how far we've come, because
Absolutely.
I feel like I don't know if we do that even enough.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Even though it's just the very, we are just scraping the tip of the iceberg right now, but
yeah, no, I think that there is something really special about that. And I have to say, I mean, I think, there's something beautiful about also doing a tarot reading with someone who knows nothing about your life, because they do have this sort of, there's an outsider energy there where they're really like, the reading can feel very pure. But I do find the readings that are the most meaningful to me now are the ones that have this sort of buildup of multiple sessions, because it just makes sense, right? It's like the more you know somebody, the more you begin to understand the nuances, and you begin to understand, oh wait, this is a pattern we've seen before, and now it's mutating into this new place, and I think that there it just adds more depth to it. I think the way that you guys have approached tarot has been really, like, you're doing it right. I think that the way that you guys have, you kind of space it out, like, every couple months, and you really kind of come in as like all right, we're touching in to see like a progress report.
Yeah, totally. That's exactly what it
and
is.
Like rather, and I think you also kind of both approach it as a progress report of the here and now versus like, oh, tell me where I'm going to be down the road, which I think is dangerous to do.
Do you get that a lot from your clients?
Well, I try to always say at the beginning, like I always try to really let people know like what I'm trying to do for them in the session. And I mean, I can see where energy is moving, and I always, we talk about it a little bit in the reading, but I think there's a lot of danger in going into a session thinking like wanting prediction, wanting the future, wanting to answer the unknowns, like what's happening tomorrow, when is this person coming into my life, what's next? Because I think what happens in that scenario is that it puts you in a place of waiting. And when you're in a place of waiting, you're being really passive, and you're kind of giving your power away. And so, whereas I can sort of see where energy is moving, I always want to direct people to the here and now, because that's where their agency is, right? So if I'm sort of seeing, okay, I do see this person going on a more independent path. However, where they are right now, they're needing to shed their dependency issues. They're needing to shed this, or heal this wound that they have with their father, or, those are the things that they can leave the tarot reading and start working on that day, versus being in this place of suspension of, well, she said that 3 months from now or some point this thing is going to come. Like, I always want to give people power, and power over their own life and their own path. Plus, I really believe that we're co-creators of our destiny. And I do think there are some things that are life challenges that are meant to come into our path, but how we respond to them is really up to us. And I also think that if you go too much into the predictive, you kind of feel like it's already sort of set in stone.
Yeah.
And then again, I feel like that kind of breeds passivity. And I really want my clients to be empowered. I want my clients to be in a place where they're really tapped into their own fire, their own ability to discern, and like really kind of like awaken their own internal guidance system.
And how much of it is like, if you focus so much on the future, it almost seems kind of like you're, I don't know, so focused on it that you're almost kind of making it happen yourself, or
it's your subconscious like manifests it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, like self-fulfilling prophecy.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
You were saying that you can see how energy moves, and I'm curious, like, how your personal relationship to energy is, because I feel after we now are both like Reiki 2 attuned, and we're doing all this like study on energy, and it's just really fascinating to see everybody's different relationship to energy and how they feel it or how they
process it.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. I mean, I think I was always a really intuitive kid, and I've always been really intuitive, but I think for a long time my kind of like heightened antenna felt like such a negative. It felt like this thing that made operating in the world really difficult. And it took me a really long time to even be aware that I had a heightened antenna. Like, I don't think I even really understood that I was like picking up on more information than maybe somebody next to me was. And then 2, learning to kind of control it a little bit. And I mean, I think that to answer your question about energy, I mean, like, when I go into a social event, I pick up, I guess it's called I think it's clairsentient. I think it's like I feel other people's feelings.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so I can I can feel like if somebody just had a fight with their partner and walked into a party and is smiling and talking to everybody, I can feel like a knot in my chest, and I feel like a tension with this person. And so it can make it really awkward for me sometimes, because there are so many social settings where what is being felt and what is being said are not the same.
Totally.
And one of the things that has been such a relief for me in discovering tarot is that it gives me an ability to talk to people about the thing that I feel, and that I can, there's sort of this open format where we can just be really honest. Whereas if I met that same person in a different context, I might feel all the things that I feel and might have this information for them, but it's totally socially unacceptable.
Yeah.
So it's not good. It's not good. It's not good cocktail conversation to talk to somebody about their deepest wound.
Right.
So
it gives you a vehicle to sort of communicate your feelings through.
Yeah, and I think too, with the energy, like I think information kind of comes to me too in flashes. Like I also see like lots of visions, but the visions tend to be metaphors, and so it's also been, which is very helpful with painting.
Yeah.
But I think with tarot, I'm still learning this more. Like when I'm doing a session with somebody, above and beyond the images that are on the deck, and like really connecting to that archetypal story, like really trying to hone in on, wait, why am I seeing this image right now? And what is the metaphor of this image trying to communicate to me about this person? And is it a memory of theirs? Is it something they're experiencing now? Like it's sort of this language. And before I discovered tarot, I always had an ability to, and I think everybody has this to a certain degree, but read messages. Like I was always very tuned in to, for example, if I was met somebody for lunch, and as I'm sitting down to meet them, somebody walks by wearing a t-shirt, and the t-shirt has this like image of a monster on it or something. You know what I mean? Just I was always very tuned into coincidence and symbolism, and just sort of noticing the patterning of when certain things happened, and almost feeling like information was being communicated. And I think that, again, everyone has this ability, but for whatever reason I was always like very aware of it, but it was overwhelming. And then again, I think the thing I like about tarot is it almost feels like this agreed upon meeting time to kind of decipher. And then also it feels like it has I almost see it as like did you ever as a kid invent a language or like an alphabet with a friend, where you're like, A is this symbol, B is this symbol, so it almost becomes this code, right? And it's sort of like tarot is a system of archetypes, but it's almost like a code. And it's divination, like you're talking to the spirit world, so it's a way of communicating to the spirit world, and there's a language that they can use to talk to you that is agreed upon. Like we've agreed upon the meaning of the magician. We've agreed upon the meaning of, the Three of Cups. And so then as the tarot reader, I'm then sort of just trying to, in a sense, read the story that is unfolding in front of me, which is exciting. It's exciting, and it's a challenge every time. Every time there's like a new combination, and every time I'm just trying to decipher the code,
When did you get into tarot, and how did you get into tarot?
It's not... For me, it wasn't like an overnight thing. It was really, really gradual. And, but I would say in my early 20s, I had a reading kind of randomly, and it scared the shit out of me. Like, cause the person's, I was fascinated by it, but she said things and saw things that at that point in my life were really a secret. Like I was hiding from everybody, kind of including myself. And so it really scared me that this stranger could sort of see and pinpoint things that I didn't want anybody to know. But then I think because of that, there was this sort of like this fascination. And around that time, like, a deck, I lived in a house in college with like a bunch of women, and like there was a deck in the house. And so I kind of loosely played with it, and it was this sort of this thing around me, but I started gradually becoming more and more fascinated with tarot, and then began to again seek out readers. But, there were a lot of things like I moved into a house that had a tarot reader downstairs. And so every day that I would come home, I would literally pass the tarot reader. And so in my mind, there were so many kind of like, there was synchronicities and sort of signs that I was going towards there. And like I said, before I even fully learned to read the tarot, I was already kind of giving people readings. Like, you know, strangers had a way of sort of seeking me out and asking me these questions or somehow divulging information that was personal. And so in some ways I was already kind of doing readings, but I learned it slowly. And I went through periods where I was really open to the esoteric and the unknown, and then I had moments where I pushed it away. But I would say that I developed a discipline around it. It became more than a curiosity and more about like a practice, like a daily practice. Maybe sometime in the last like 5 years. I mean, I'd been studying it for forever, but I think about 5 years ago, it really became like a heightened discipline where I was like, I really actively was using it every day and like really working with it. And again, that progression was first it was for me, then it was like very shyly for friends. And then there was this sort of moment where I think a friend was like, you know, you're really good at this. And like, you should, you know, do this for other people. And then that combined with some other things happening in my life at the time. And quite truthfully, I don't think I would have done it had I not been in a moment where like certain other things in my life were falling apart and I kind of needed a way to make money. And I was like, well, I guess I'll try giving some readings. And I didn't take it seriously, but it was one of those things that I think I was really meant to do. And the second I kind of opened it up, it just started running. And it's like, I think I was living in Joshua Tree at the time. I just made a flyer and I put it on a bulletin board, and that's all I did. And someone called me and I gave them a reading. And then somebody else called me and gave me a reading. Wow. And then they gave my number to somebody else. And then someone who had an Airbnb in Joshua Tree asked me if I could put a flyer in their house. And then it just spread like wildflower. I said wildflowers, but I guess wildflowers and wildfire. I mean, and it scared me. Like, I just was like, oh, wait, slow down. Like, I'm not ready for this. And I think I only had been giving readings to strangers for about 3 months when I got contacted by a magazine and they said they wanted to do a profile on me. And I just didn't respond.
As a tarot reader.
Oh, I was so freaked out. I was like, wait, no. Like, no, I'm a painter. Like, no.
You're like, is this how I want the world to see me?
Well, but I also just didn't feel, at that point, I think I was still very uncomfortable with what was happening. And I talked to like maybe even like a month after that to a friend who was a tarot reader as well. And she laughed at me and she was like, go write them back. Like, you need to do this. And so I did. And from that point on, I think I actually I stopped resisting it and started flowing with it. And, you know, I've also had since then, like astrology charts done. And, you know, whenever I have the astrology charts done, they're always sort of affirm the fact that this is something I'm meant to do, you know. But it's funny how we can sometimes resist things, and the more we resist them, you know, the more they kind of dance around us and try to get our attention.
Well, it almost seems like the universe sort of created the perfect situation for you to go into it, right? Like, by removing some of the things, or like almost
blocking other distractions even.
Absolutely. And Joshua Tree was such a beautiful place to really open that up. I mean, you know, most of the time when I was working with tarot before, it was in Boston, it was in New York, in these really urban environments where it's like there's a lot of noise. And, you know, I was in Joshua Tree for 1.5 years, and, you know, the desert is a really raw place, and it has a way of information rises to the surface and feelings rise to the surface, and you can't hide. You know, it's like if you've ever been out in the desert in the summer, you know, that sun is it's gonna find, you know, there's it's blaring.
It's like you melt from your core out.
Absolutely. And I think that there's an emotional energy in the desert, and Joshua Tree specifically, that mirrors the sun, right? It's like you can't hide. And so it can be uncomfortable, but it can also be really cathartic. And it's also a deeply spiritual place. And just being around nature and being in a place where nature is louder,
Yeah.
and the presence of humans feels small, where you're more surrounded by like these, the landscape, the horizon, these rocks, the coyotes, the plants and their medicine, and like the rabbits. I mean, it's such a good place to go inward, and it's such a good. It was the right place for me to really fully embrace just the spiritual and tarot specifically. And so I'm actually really grateful that that's the place where I started being a reader in a more outward way. And since then I'm now in Los Angeles, and I love being a reader here too, but I feel like, again, since there's so much noise here, it would have been a challenging place to start.
Yeah.
And so Joshua Tree was the right place to start. And then once I became comfortable in it, I was then able to like almost transfer it over to the city.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Your whole explanation about Joshua Tree just made me realize it probably wasn't a coincidence that my first tarot reading was there.
Yeah.
And that I needed to be in that environment in order to like hear clearly all the messages that were coming through.
Yeah, because I mean, if there's not a lot to do there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I mean, also just the fact that you're a really busy woman, and at that point in your life, especially, you were so go go go,
Right.
and that you had that message at a time where you were carving out space.
Right.
You were being a little bit more still.
Yeah.
You were like spending time just sitting on a back porch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like that can be uncomfortable for people. People are very afraid of stillness because things do surface, and it can be uncomfortable. But it is a really good place to kind of get that have that sort of this spiritual awakening, this breakthrough. And it doesn't seem like a coincidence to me either that that's where you kind of had this epiphany.
Yeah.
But it's special. When I was in Joshua Tree, I mean, it's a place that people travel to a lot. So, so many of my clients that I met at that time were traveling. I mean, you were from Los Angeles, but I had clients traveling in from literally all over the world.
Oh, wow.
And I would say a very, very high percentage of them that I met in that time have kept in touch with me. And we've like really cultivated this ongoing relationship, which for me it's so profoundly special, because it was such a particular chapter for me, and it was so new and fresh, and there was again that vulnerability, and I kind of love the fact that all these people were energetically drawn to this place, and that was sort of the place that we connected. So it's wonderful. I love that one session in the desert led us to where we are right now, sitting almost 2 years later,
exactly.
having this conversation.
Oh my God, almost 2 years later.
I know. It's really
I mean, I don't think it's any coincidence either that our first joint reading was in Joshua Tree also. And that was the first time that I had met you. Yeah. That was, oh my God, I was so scared.
I remember that. I was terrified. I could tell it in her face too. You're just like really, really tense.
I know. I was like, keep your shit together, girl. Yeah, no, that was like, I was going through some massive PTSD detoxing.
Yeah.
And it showed in my reading.
But was it scary?
It was honest.
Yeah.
It was really honest. Yeah. But again, it was all things that like I kind of already knew.
Yeah.
Especially at that point in my life, because, talk about the universe, like making space for you, like things I had just sort of, it was like everything had to blow up for us to sort of come back and start sort of like from one seed again and to like grow from there. We had to get like really raw and very almost elementary, where
Definitely.
like go like back to the basics. So everything that I like, definitely all the stuff to watch out for in that reading, I remember very specifically being like, okay, yeah, I've gotten that feedback before.
Yeah, and I just remember a lot of rainbows too. A lot of like, it was a lot of new beginnings, a lot of new, but also
yeah, I remember yours was. Mine was like all swords and like lightning bolts. I remember at one point Caris was even like, guys, just don't stress about the pictures. Like not every like scary picture is bad.
Well, I think ironically, I mean, everyone wants to get the stars and the rainbows and the like the the sort of like the there's certain cards that everybody wants to get.
Sure.
But ironically, I think it's the readings that kind of have the quote unquote scariest cards on the deck, you know, that have the most medicine. You know, yes, it feels good to get a pat on the back and an accolade and a gold star, but like, is that really helping you?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I think if you're going for a tarot reading, I think you need to be honest with yourself about what you're actually trying to get out of it. And I personally don't think it's really helpful to tell a client. I want to tell clients positive things. I don't want to make it sound like I'm not saying positive things. And I'm always actually trying to push them towards the positive. But sometimes the process of doing that is talking about things that are uncomfortable.
Right.
But I also will say, I mean, to your point, Sam, it's rare that I say something that people don't already know, which you could say like, well, okay, then what's the point of getting a tarot reading? But I think it's really, really powerful to, one, hear strangers say it, and then two, to have it, like, you know, there's something about tarot is a visual language, right? It's images, archetypes, and that, especially as a painter, like that resonates with me because it talks directly to the unconscious. And our conscious mind is so good at constructing excuses, you know, distractions, and all these things to kind of obliterate us from directly connecting to our subconscious and the messages it's trying to tell us, and you know, the wounds there. And I think that tarot is can be a very powerful way of getting all that nonsense out of the way and really seeing it for what it is, and distilling it. And that distillation is where the medicine is, right? And it's, you know, it's up to the client to decide, okay, now that I'm really seeing this, what am I going to do with it? And am I going to choose to do something with it? And my best clients, and I would count you both as being in that category, are the ones who hear it and see it, and, you know, and really are like, okay, like, what am I hear you, I see this, I see myself, I'm choosing to see myself, and I'm really going to work on it, and I'm really going to choose to stare at that uncomfortable thing and really like work on it, you know. And that's where, I mean, ultimately in our human journey, that's what we're all trying to do.
Yeah. You said something that actually resonates really deep, because, you know, through our journey of healing and stuff, we're learning that, you know, you really do have all the answers inside of you of where you want to go. But to your point, we don't always want to hear them, or we don't always want to face it. And I feel like with tarot, it's a way to actually show you a mirror of what you look like and what you're actually, you know, dealing with, or who you are, and, you know, all of your faults or strengths, or, you know, and a mixture of both.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. But I also want to say that, you know, tarot, I think, can be really great about kind of doing like a deeper psychological, or gaining a deeper psychological understanding. But I do think tarot can also be really helpful, for example, you know, when you're like a freelancer or a creative, or even when you're not, understanding at this point in time, what do I need to lean into? Right? Like, is this a period where I need to be more contemplative, waiting, inward, reflecting? Or is this a moment in my life where I need to be networking, engaging, socializing? Do I need to be creating right now, or do I need to be refining? And the language of tarot is very helpful in understanding which of those variables are advantageous to you, and which one of those variables you need to just kind of like save it for later. You know, and it can be confusing. And I think, you know, especially I would say a lot of my clients are either entrepreneurs or in creative fields, like they're writers, they're artists, they're directors. And I think it's because, you know, with people who are more self-directed, it can be really confusing, because you know, because you're deciding every day what foot you're putting forward, and so that can be a lot of like a big responsibility, but too confusing, right? You know, like what do I need to prioritize right now? And I do think tarot can be really helpful in an understanding what to lean into.
Yeah, I think it's been really helpful too, just to get a sense of what kinds of things can pop up Yeah, and then that's why I really like the regular check-ins. Although now that I said that I hadn't had another tarot reading, I'm like, I'm such a liar. We had a reading with Ingrid in New York, which was actually really cool because I had just recently had my last reading with you.
Yes.
And it was like basically a very similar reading. Like the takeaways were very similar in both, which I thought was really amazing, and I think speaks to how intuitive you both are. And even though the formats were slightly different, but what I find really helpful sometimes too is like when something becomes a little bit of a roadblock, sometimes I know I myself especially have a tendency to minimize things sometimes in a way that like, okay, no, this is actually affecting everything I'm trying to do in a much more dynamic way that I hadn't sort of acknowledged before, or it helps me find places where even though I knew maybe there are ongoing things that I need to work on, in that moment, they have become sort of things that I need to lean into a little bit more. But even if I don't know how to address them, it's like sometimes the only thing the only thing needed to move something in and move it forward is just to like give it a little bit of attention and acknowledgement, and tarot has really been a helpful way of, especially for me, doing that, because sometimes I'm like, oh my god, yes, I know I need to do this very big esoteric like perspective shift, but where do you even start with that? And sometimes it's like just the acknowledgement is all you need for it to start the momentum to make the changes happen, and then over time you're like, oh my gosh, all these things happen since then.
Totally.
Definitely. Definitely. And I mean, again, like, I think just the act of sitting down to do the reading, if you're really sincerely sitting down with openness and really are just like, kind of letting all your defenses down and just being, I'm in this place to really learn and be open, and just sort of like, I think if you truly enter into the space of a reading that way, that in and of itself has so much catharsis in it. And even if you don't do a single other thing, I think, the information, it comes back to you, right? Like there's you'll start remembering different moments of the reading, and like things will come up in your life and you'll be like, oh, right, there's that thing again. But yeah, I mean, it's a great tool. But I also think, I also want to say, like, I love doing tarot readings. I love the exchange, and I love kind of being a sounding board for people. It's something that's really special to me. But I never want to be in a position where people think I am the person who knows best for them, right? Like I'm always really trying to encourage people to better hear themselves. And, sometimes you have to have that exchange in order to kind of just affirm things you were already feeling or give yourself permission. But, again, like I want my clients to tune in, and really have it be about an evolution of them becoming more self-aware and more intuitive. Because I think that in general in our society, we don't necessarily value intuition in the way that we should.
100%.
And I think that's a larger collective shift that we're all experiencing right now. And I think that, there's like a bigger spiritual awakening happening. And it's uncomfortable. It's exciting, but it's uncomfortable. And, I appreciate that through the language of tarot that I'm getting to kind of witness all these individual people go through I mean, you both have been going through an awakening over these past 2 years, and it's special to witness. It's special to witness people just valuing their own compass above what they're being told outwardly should be their compass.
Do you see trends in some of the issues that people are coming, or that are kind of arising through some of the readings? And then also, I'm curious if through even doing regular readings, if you've seen your clients become more mindful people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've got to say, like, I've met so many beautiful souls through doing tarot, which has been really, really special. But I've so many of the clients that have been drawn to me for one reason or another I tend to attract a lot of people who are about to go through a breakthrough, have a breakthrough. Like they're about to go experience a radical shift, or they're like, they're about to leave a relationship or a job, or they're about to, step into something that is a deeper part of their path. And I tend to, I don't know, for whatever reason, that tends to be not all my clients, but that is a strong theme. So I've really watched a lot of people take big leaps. And also, there's a lot of clients that I have that I think are also waking up to something beyond themselves. If you look at tarot and the major arcana in tarot, the Fool's Journey, the first tier of the tarot is all about the self, and the ego, the expectations of others. The second tier is all about the destruction of the self, kind of like going really through a period where things fall apart. And then the third tier is really about the spiritual awakening and really learning to put yourself out there, but not necessarily for your own glory or like so that you can get the accolades of other people or like your parents will be proud of you, but because you recognize that by empowering yourself and directing yourself from an inward place is really better for the collective, and or doing something that is more about helping the collective. So for example, like, I might have a client who maybe they're a successful journalist or something, but they're writing, ultimately it was because their parents wanted them to go into this field, and they're writing about things that they don't care about anymore, and like it feels soulless to them. I mean, maybe journalism is a bad example, but or they're a lawyer, you know what I mean? Like they went to law school.
I feel like we both went through that exactly. I'm like, you're speaking our language.
But it's sort of more about like, this is the right thing to do. This is, and also it could also be egoic. Like it could also be like, this makes me feel important. This makes me feel like I have status, reputation, which, and I'm not trying to poo-poo that at all. Like I'm, there's something to be said for that. But then they tend to kind of go through a period where they question it or things fall apart. Like either they choose to implode it or it just happens naturally. Yeah. Then ultimately moving to a place where they then are leaning into their natural gifts, but more from a place the point of motivation shifts. It's rather than the motivation force being
material.
Well, you can still be really successful and be a spiritual person. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that to be a spiritual person means that you need to deny yourself from the material realm.
But maybe that doesn't become the goal anymore.
Yeah, I think maybe it's not the goal, and it's also not it's not the carrot. It's not the motivating force. The motivating force is like, above all else, it needs to be in alignment with my soul. Yeah. It needs to feel right. And then, ultimately, hopefully, it's also something that by doing this, I'm also in some way empowering the collective. And I would say to, get back to your question, that has been a theme that I've seen with so many of my clients, which is it's really affirming for me, and it's really exciting and inspiring. And, I've seen it in so many fields, like down for people working in the realm of healthcare, to people working in, the performing arts, to just so many different facets of life. And it seems in my mind to be like a deeper collective awakening happening.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
From your vantage point, to be able to see all these different souls going through that transition.
Totally.
That's really cool.
Totally. It's inspiring. And it's, I take it really seriously that, like, to make that transition is scary. Yeah. And to really, there is a certain amount of security and safety in kind of taking the more egoic path. It's maybe a path that is more initially rewarded. And so, like, learning to operate from the inside out can feel really uncomfortable. It can feel really unfamiliar. It can also be a period where if you've been operating from such a different place your whole life, people can also be like, what the fuck is going on with you? Sorry, please say fuck in the podcast. What is going on with you? Like, what is up, right? And so, like, the people around you can feel really confused too. And so I think, again, since that's it's such a radical departure, that's all the more reason why it can be really helpful to seek out advice and just sort of be like, okay, no, you're not crazy. Like, you're not just sort of taking a wrecking ball to your life. You're actually doing the opposite. You know, you're peeling back the dead layers, you know. If you think about a plant, you know, when you have a plant and there's parts of the plant that have died, you know, if you break off those branches, it allows them to send nutrients to the new branches, right? And it's sending energy to the old dead branches. It's like wasted energy, right? So it's like really teaching somebody like, no, like that was meant to fall away. That's no longer serving you. You're evolving. This is where your growth is. This is where you're needing to go moving forward.
Yeah, and it's also like those periods of such massive transformation. Also, I read the other day that like sometimes the goal isn't to solve a problem, it's to be in the space of dissolving. So just like, yeah, exactly that. Getting rid of like all of these old layers of things that no longer serve you, and stepping into a place where maybe like you wake up one day and you're like, okay, I used to think I was this person, but now that none of those things are in my life anymore, who am I?
Yeah.
And then that really allows you to start the journey, but you have to start somewhere. Whereas it's like you have to like shed all of those stereotypes and those like titles and those
things that don't matter.
Yeah, before you can really start to like reform who you really are authentically.
Yeah.
Which is not an easy process to go through.
No, it's not. It's not. And it can feel really confusing.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. But I think, you know, first of all, I think not everybody does it.
Yeah.
You know, I think that there are
hard.
some people who, like in this lifetime, they're not ready to. You know, and I do think there's some people, I mean, if you think about like the life in terms of the, you know, the tiers of tarot, there are some people who spend their whole life on that first tier, or some people who get to the place of destruction and then they kind of give up, you know, and they kind of fall into the you know, like nothing's gonna work out, and they kind of get overtaken by it. But I've watched so many people come back, rise up, you know, really find themselves again and deeper, and so many different chapters of their lives too, you know. Like I think one of the things that's been so beautiful about tarot is that I've gotten to connect with people who are different ages than me, different, you know, genders than me, different ethnic backgrounds, like, you know, people who have walked such different lives than I have. But there is this sort of universal language with tarot that really kind of gets down to the collective experience and the things that we all share, right? That, I mean, all of us know what it's like to be in the Hermit card, you know, and what it feels like to be in a period where we just feel inward, disconnected, you know, thoughtful in our head. And there's a way to be in that energy and to be in the positive element of it, and there's a way to be in that energy where you're in the shadow of it. Right. So, yeah.
Your art has so much symbolism in it, and you know, it's not lost on me that also tarot is literally a series of symbols too. And I'm curious, like, how tarot has affected your art,
and vice versa.
Yeah, vice versa.
I mean, I've done a couple paintings that are inspired by different archetypes in the tarot. Not many, but I've done several versions of the Empress, who's one of the feminine sort of energies in the deck. And I've done paintings of the High Priestess, who's like one of the other sort of feminine powerhouses in the deck. So that in that way, it's very direct, you know, very direct influence. And, you know, I think people often have said to me, people who don't even know that I read tarot, because I do separate my painting and tarot a little bit. Like I feel like I have some clients who don't even know I paint, and then I have some people who know me as a painter that don't know I do tarot, you know, and I'm okay with that. But I have had people come up to me and say there's something in my paintings that make them think of tarot. And I think that's because, you know, it's very graphic. Yeah. And when I say graphic, I mean that it's using really clean lines, very flat planes of color, very sort of simple in its, there's a simplicity in terms of how the information is shown. And then I'm interested in archetypes. And so there's a lot of kind of archetypal energy in my paintings. And I think that, you know, tarot is interested in the subconscious And I am really interested in the subconscious as well with my paintings. But I don't like use tarot to make a painting necessarily. You know, it's like, so in that way there's not necessarily like a connection, but I would say that the space I go into in order to give a reading is very similar to the space I go into to paint. You know, it's like the sort of
They both speak to your intuition in a similar way.
Yeah, and I think the way that I have to kind of like energetically get myself there, like the way that I kind of have to really ground myself and kind of almost open up like this other realm. I mean, I think there's almost like a bit of channeling that happens with both of those things. And it feels really similar to me.
Do you meditate before?
I was going to say, what's your process for opening up?
Before sessions or before painting?
Both.
I do. I mean, I have to be honest. Like I went through a couple years where I was like very, very disciplined with the meditation, and it was really much more of like I would sit and I'd meditate for maybe 15 minutes before painting. And I would say at the moment, it's less of that. It tends to be more of like a centering, like, you know, like I'll sit before I paint and just for a couple minutes place a hand on my heart and close my eyes and just kind of like center in my energy. I always do that before a tarot reading. So I definitely do it before painting, but I absolutely do it before a tarot reading, because it's not only am I tapping into my energy when I'm doing a tarot reading, I'm actually more tapping into the other person's energy. And so for me to do that, it's like you kind of need boundaries with the spirit world.
Sure, yeah.
And I think that took me a really long time to understand. And so for me in that realm, before a client comes in, I first have to be ready to take on another person's energy. And then, you know, when you come for a reading with me, I lead both of us in this process of centering, you know, like I'm trying to get my client to be present. I'm trying to get my client to open up their energy. And then while we're both kind of being meditative and quiet, we'll call in their spirit guides. And, you know, I'm asking in that process for permission to read their cards. I'm asking permission for the spirit guides to come in and communicate for me the most helpful information. And then at the end of the reading, I then am energetically closing it, you know, and then thanking their spirit guides and then telling them like, okay, closed for business. Like the portal is closed.
Yeah.
And I do think for anyone who's wanting to work with tarot, I do think you need to be really aware of the fact that I do really believe it's a form of divination, and that if you want to use it as a tool, you need to be conscious of that and to kind of do it responsibly. You know, and I think the best way to do it is, I mean, and not all tarot readers agree with me on this, but in my personal experience, I find if you bring in a little bit of ritual around it and you kind of have an opening and a closing, I think one, there's a level of respect that is there, and then two, I think that it's, how do I say it? You carry the energy less.
I see.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. It is boundaries.
It's boundaries. Yeah.
It's like, it's almost like even if you're not, even though after a reading, obviously you would be fully present there, but even if you weren't, going through the motions is like sort of the ritual you need to kind of shut that door. So you're not carrying excess, if anything.
Definitely. And I would also say,
this is a process we're both learning.
Oh,
I mean, I'm learning in particular
it's hard
right now. Like fuck boundaries.
Well, and I'll also say, even for people listening who are like not necessarily interested in playing with tarot themselves, I mean, who are just dealing with boundaries in relationships in their lives. I mean, it's a similar thing. And I would actually say, ironically, since I've started working with tarot, I feel like my boundaries with other relationships in my life have gotten better.
Oh, wow.
Because one, I take on so many people's energy all the time that it's exhausting for me. I mean, I love it, but it's exhausting. So it's like I just can't, you know? Like I'm just like the level of emotional space I have left is very limited. But I think because I've learned to create boundaries with clients, it's then given me a skill set that I've kind of taken over to other areas. And, like I can think of an example of like a friendships where maybe we had really bad boundaries, and I was always like the person that they were calling on and needing things from, and I was always feeling drained, but I didn't know how to set a boundary. And I think I can think of specific relationships in my life where I've gotten much better at just being like, nope, like close, like love you, I can't do this right now, like and not even needing to give them an explanation, but just sort of understanding intuitively that like I can't hold.
That's too much for you to take on.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's actually been helpful. It's been helpful to learn that.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I never thought about that with tarot, but it's definitely the boundary setting, I feel like, for sure has come up with our Reiki practice.
Yeah.
I'm starting to dip into Akashic Records, and there's a very specific, like, prayer to open and close, and there's a boundary. But also dealing with the spirit world, I feel like, because it's so intangible, and until you develop like a sensitivity to it, you kind of take things for granted because you just don't necessarily feel as sensitive to it. But I feel like as we've been learning more and more, especially myself, like as I've been learning a little bit more and becoming more sensitive to the energy, I just feel like now I could kind of see when I don't do those things, how it actually does impact
how it affects you. Yeah. Absolutely. And I was trained in Reiki and became a Reiki master, and I was practicing Reiki for a little while, and I stopped doing it. I mean, I Reiki my paintings, and I send Reiki energy out to my client at the beginning of a session, but it's not hands-on. Like I just energetically call on the Reiki masters and like send it. So I'm still working with Reiki all the time, but for me personally, I found the process of hands-on Reiki, or just being so, the directness of Reiki for me, without having something in between, was just way too much. And I found that I wasn't able to clear myself of my client's energy. And like I had so many experiences that like were wild. Like I did a session on a client who had problems with, like, part of their emotional coping mechanism was that they'd binge eat. And after the session I went to the grocery store, and if you know me, you know how like wildly out of character this is. And I bought a thing of Oreos, and I brought it back, and I just like downed the whole thing. Wow. And then the next day I was like, what just happened? Like that's just so crazy. I never get Oreos. Yeah. Like like I never like I have not eaten Oreos since I was probably like 6. Like what? And it was a compulsion, and not to in any way shame anyone who's eating Oreos at home, but just to say that it was very out of character. Yeah. And I realized afterwards, and there was other examples too, and like like a very angry client, I was picking up on their anger and just or like feeling heavy and depressed before a depressed client came in. And I still experienced that to a certain extent with tarot, but I found it was so much more pronounced for me with Reiki that I had to kind of make a decision that like, okay, I think this is not right for me. Yeah. But I do really love and respect it. But you're really in someone's energy field in a very powerful way. Yeah. And so I think, which is beautiful. And I would arguably say that, we're always in each other's energy fields, but I think that you need to be, for anyone who's interested in that realm, I think you need to tune into what feels right for you. Yeah, absolutely. And to sort of check in with yourself, and also check in with yourself and be like, I can't remember where I heard this, but someone, a powerful question for anyone, who feels in any way empathetic, or is this mine? Is this feeling I'm feeling mine, or did I sponge it off of somebody else? And oftentimes for people who are sensitive and empathetic, we are tuning into other people's emotional frequencies, and then we're kind of taking it on ourselves and like learning to really, and I still struggle with this, but like really learning to kind of separate our own emotions from those of other people.
Yeah, that's a really hard lesson.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually kind of crazy hearing you. I mean, there are no coincidences. So thank you. Thank you, universe. Got the message. But hearing you talk about it is kind of crazy because I'm literally going through that exact same thing in my Reiki training right now. And I had a couple like experiences where I was actually demolished for like a week afterwards, and I was like, thank God I can go back to my teacher and be like, fix me, like ground me again. But it was like I had just, and even though I was doing all of the clearing, it's like it's so powerful to connect to somebody else's energy that way that you almost don't, especially, I mean, in particular in my case, like I almost, even though I was doing the clearing, underestimated how much I was taking on and how much I was, it's like even just focusing on the wrong things or trying to accomplish a task with the Reiki can cause you not to channel it properly and like clear it.
Yeah.
And it's been quite a lesson. But everything you just said is like, I was like, oh yeah, I just learned that lesson. Oh yeah, I just learned that lesson. Like,
yeah, I mean, and I'm sure there's going to be someone listening who is a Reiki healer who's going to be like, have thoughts on things I could have done to work with it. But I think too, for me, I think it was also me just learning above and beyond that, like where I feel safe, and also where I feel the most confident, and where my strengths can shine the best. And I think, again, because I'm such a visual person, I'm a painter, and the way that information comes to me is a bit of a channeling. I think that shines the strongest through a medium like tarot versus Reiki. And I have so much respect for friends of mine who are Reiki healers, because it's like, it's really it's like being in an ER, you know what I mean? Like you really are just like, it's intense.
Totally.
And tarot can be really intense too, but I do think there are boundaries there.
And it's almost also like with tarot, to your point, like there is an agreed upon set of meanings for certain things, and certain ways that like the cards are arranged and which cards show up in which places, which helps sort of translate some of that. Whereas with something like Reiki, it's very intangible, right? And so it's like you don't necessarily know everything that you're
feeling or
clearing,
right.
And so I totally get that. It makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, definitely. But I also will say, just on the Reiki note again, I mean, I loved learning Reiki, and I'm so grateful that I went through my Reiki training, and I love the Reiki healers that I worked with. Like for Reiki 1, it was Lisa Levine of Maha Rose. For Reiki 2, it was Erica Spring, who's a Reiki healer and also a musician friend of mine. And for Reiki 3, it was Catherine Smirk, who's a dear friend as well. And I learned so much from each of those women, and I think like it was part of my journey of really understanding and studying energy. And really, and I think in some ways the going into that space that was too much for me helped me.
Oh, totally.
And that was good
that
information.
was a lesson you needed to learn.
And I think it showed me where I was experiencing that in other ways and other places in my life, and just to understand that I am a really sensitive person, and I do pick up on so much, and that I can't ignore that. That I have to really be aware of that and protective of it in some ways, like maybe Disneyland isn't the best place for me to go. But you know what I mean? Like there's just certain environments that are going to always be challenging for me. And not to say that I'm going to, avoid all social things. I go to social things all the time, but just to be more aware going into it and then leaving the things I need to do. And this goes for anyone listening who might feel like this might resonate with, like, to understand that after you go to a big party or social event, you might need some quiet time to clear and cleanse, and just really kind of tune back into yourself. And maybe don't go straight from the crazy, like the cocktail party straight to a concert. You know what I mean? Right. Like that if you're a sensitive person, that you're going to find yourself energetically spinning if you're too much in the energy of others for too long.
That's literally what I feel like I've been learning. And it's a lot of things that I feel like I've sort of take it for granted as
Yeah.
a kid, you know, and I've always felt these things, you know, even as adult really, but there was always this attitude of like, just suck it up and deal with it, you know? And now I think having gone through Reiki, I know that I'm not meant to be a Reiki master necessarily, but it has helped me with my breathwork facilitation. It's helped me with daughters and what we're doing here. It's helped me with the interviews for Wounded, like all the things, you know,
Definitely.
just me understanding my own energy better.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. And I think too, just the idea of acknowledging again that everything is energy.
Yeah.
You know, and really beginning to look at the world in that way, you know, and just sort of understanding. I think when you begin to really understand that too, I think you begin to really understand the interconnectedness of everything, right? Like that we affect each other, you know, and that, you know, on a certain level, you know, someone else's pain is your pain.
Yeah.
And that, you know, obviously we need to kind of like deal with that within reason, but, and it can be very overwhelming, but I think that ultimately as a culture we are needing to tune into that more. You know?
Yeah, we talk about that actually quite a bit, how even meditation is sort of in the same camp as Reiki in that sense, where it's like these are tools that we've learned to deal with challenges that we were encountering ourselves, but then have become tools to allow us to do all of these other things more effectively.
Absolutely.
And that there's so much power in that.
Totally. Yeah.
And, you know, if you're never going to become like a meditation teacher or you're never going to become like a Reiki healer, like just even the process of learning about it and applying it to yourself is sort of like umbrella effect.
Absolutely.
Right?
I mean, it's, you know, we learn to write, but we're not all writers.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
I think it's just a great skill, and I think that we're not given enough skills that are about empathy, you know, that are about interconnections, that are about humanity.
Or even just connecting to your intuition better.
Absolutely.
That's how I
Absolutely.
see tarot, very much so. Like, I will pull cards now in the morning with the question, what do I need to just focus on today? Or what do I need to know today going into my day?
Absolutely.
And it really has helped me sort of go into my intuition and hear myself better, I guess. You know, I totally see tarot as an intuition tool. It's like,
It is.
Yeah, it's really amazing.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Do you have a particular session that was just incredibly profound that you would like to share?
You know, I've had so many sessions that were incredibly profound, but I think the one that stands out for me right now is happened really recently, and it was actually with my grandmother.
Oh, wow.
My grandmother is 82 years old. She's diehard Catholic, had 8 kids, named all 4 girls Mary. I mean, she's like, you know, very religious.
Was she anti-tarot?
Well, you know, we never really talked about it. And, you know, I had her come to visit recently, and this was a really meaningful trip for a number of reasons. I mean, like, I'm queer, and I'm living with my partner who's a woman, and, you know, that's been kind of like a journey with my family. And I'd really been kind of going through this process of understanding with my grandma for the last couple of years about her really learning to embrace and understand just the full extent of who I am. And she was here visiting with us. We were having a lovely visit, and the topic of tarot came up. And, you know, in some ways, I think it's still something for me that in certain areas of my life I just don't talk about because it makes people uncomfortable. And I think with my family and with parts of my family, I have a tendency to just kind of not talk about it. And the same goes, you know, I'm getting better about it, but I think sometimes I don't like making people uncomfortable. So I think this is a bigger arch for me in this lifetime to learn when it's good to edit and when I just need to. Anyways, so grandma was here, tarot somehow came up, and my partner, you know, to her credit, kind of was like, hey grandma, you want a reading? And I was like, no, what are you doing? No. And I was just like, and grandma, for whatever reason, was like, yeah. And I have never been more terrified to give someone a reading.
No pressure.
Yeah,
I was so scared. One, I was like, what if she thinks that this is just like
the devil's work?
Well, I think, you know, what if she gets terrible cards? Like, what if the horrible message? Like, I'm scared of what the messages are, but what if also she doesn't she leaves the reading thinking is either offended or doesn't think it's
So much
and
out of that.
her face was so serious and she was so quiet, and I had no idea what was going on inside of her during the reading, and the whole reading I was just like terrified, and I paused kind of at a point of closure, and I was like, does this resonate? And she was quiet, and then she was like, wow. And she's like, wow, yeah. And it was like deep sigh of relief, and then all of a sudden it was like she kind of had this quiet, and then she almost got excited, and she was like, wait, can you? And then she had all these questions.
Wow.
And so it was really, and then I got excited, you know, and it was this really beautiful moment where, and I give her so much credit, because I was like, here's this 82-year-old woman who has at a chapter in her life and just sort of in society where we think of people being so closed off, so stuck in their ways, you know, and just she was open and receptive and curious, and I really, that was such a profoundly meaningful reading for me. And it was not just about the reading, it was about, you know, the connection that happened, that deepened between my grandmother and I, and then also witnessing this woman in her own spiritual journey, and realizing that in our evolution as humans, we never stop evolving. You know, and to witness my grandma, I mean, you know, just to see her in this chapter in her life where we really think of it as being this sort of like closing chapter, but there's so many news in her life right now. And just to witness that, in my mind, was exciting.
That's really
you know, and I think it really changed the way I see growing old. You know, and just that it really, it can be, if we're open to it, just a continual process of discovery, which in my mind is really exciting.
It's just a matter of being open to it, right? Like, I've been going through similar things with my own mother. She's in her like early 70s, but very conservative, very religious, and very set in her ways. And I just literally got back from Houston to visit her, and I've slowly, actually, it was through an Akashic Records reading, I asked the question, you know, like, how can I help her? Like, how can I help her soul evolve in this lifetime?
Right.
And the question that, or the answer that I received was, the more open and honest and just upfront with her about who I have become and who I'm evolving to be. And share with her all these things that I'm trying and all these experiences I've been having, even though I'm afraid that she's going to think I'm bonkers or like, you know, all these things, you know, I should just go ahead and do it. And this trip, I was able to really talk to her about some of, like, even things like breath work, which she has no concept of, you know, but opening up to her about that, and opening up to her about past lives and our soul's journey and all these things, you know. And she just, I actually don't know what she thinks, but she was so receptive. We ended up talking one night so late because she was just finally very open to hearing my perspective and not judging, you know.
Right.
It was really awesome.
That's, I mean, how beautiful is that?
Yeah, it was really cool.
It kind of reminds me of this concept where passion and energy sort of live with the younger generations and drive, and then you have this older generation where it's all about wisdom and sort of like being able to sort of see the life's purpose and being more open to what does life and death mean in this transition that they're, you know, that this older generation is about to move into. And there's such a beautiful balance of the two. And the more that we get into this, the more I'm finding that it's also a really beautiful way to open a door and build a stronger connection with even our own families.
For sure.
No matter what the medium is, in a way that sort of helps us understand each other better and gives us these moments where we actually, like, our souls can see each other.
Absolutely.
In a way that we just weren't able to before. And even if it is just, because especially in my family, it's like a lot of questions and then like non-responses to things.
Right.
But the fact that they're asking is like a big step.
The door is open.
Yeah.
The door is open.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that evolution and that process, I think it can't be forced. You know, I think it's really important to not ever, no matter what your ideology is, force your ideology upon others. Like, I really do think, you know, it's something we all need to be very conscious of. But openness is really important.
Yeah.
And I think that no matter what your belief system is, I think that if you're really in tune with yourself and you're really like kind of following your truth, I think it's magnetic.
Yeah.
And I think people become naturally curious and want to understand, and especially if you've made a big shift, you know, and then they see something shifting towards the positive in you, you know, I think that can make people a little bit more open or interested. And I'm hope, you know, I love hearing stories of that, like of an exchange with family where like you wouldn't necessarily think that there would be receptivity there. And I definitely, I mean, I have to kind of catch myself. I mean, the story just showed, I mean, it kind of showed my own prejudices too, that, and my own judgments, that I sort of assumed certain things about somebody else's limitations and was really pleasantly surprised. You know, so I do think that there also is a two-endedness, that both people have to be open to the other person's ability to just sort of take it in. But again, within limits, you know, I think there, I've gone through points maybe in my early 20s where I could be a little dogmatic sometimes about things that I was excited about, and I've learned that you need that's not the best tactic. You know? That sometimes it's better to kind of like let people come to you.
Well, especially when it comes to anything spiritual and anything to do with energy, I found like when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Absolutely.
You know, like when they're ready to ask questions, they will ask questions, but it is such a personal thing for people. And it's such a new way of thinking in Western culture, especially, that it's like it can become very polarizing very quickly.
Definitely. And for like full transparency, I mean, you know, even though in some ways I'm like so deeply enmeshed in this, like there is a part of me that's still very private and shy and, you know, is quick to coil, you know, and I experience this tendency to want to censor myself and not share certain things that I'm constantly pushing against, you know, and that's been, again, a part of my journey and is something that I'm dealing with also in my artwork too, and just sort of trying to figure out the space of, you know, I am a very spiritual person, and the unconscious and the sort of tapping into other realms is a huge part of my painting practice and my painting journey, and that's becoming much more embraced in the art world. I mean, like Hilma af Klint just had a beautiful retrospective at the Guggenheim, and like Agnes Pelton has paintings touring around, so it definitely is in some ways being celebrated, but I still would say that it's not the predominant belief system, that there still is that, you know, coming at painting from a place of academia is in more an intellect, and not to say that my work is devoid of intellect, because it's not. There's a lot of thinking going on there too, but just sort of what we prize, right? What we prize, what we sort of say is sort of like the acceptable language in which to talk about something and which to derive upon an idea. I still have a long way to go in that realm, but and also simultaneously I'm feeling it out. Like, you know, sometimes I've also noticed with my connection to spirituality, it ebbs and flows, you know, and that there's certain periods where I am completely consumed in it, and then there's periods where it's never goes away, but it's maybe quieter, you know, and also simultaneously I find that there's periods where I really want to talk about it, and then there's periods where I'm like, you know what, I think for this period, for whatever reason, it's private, and I don't really want to talk about it, and I want to protect it and kind of keep it a little bit more sacred, more personal. So I think that is also something to kind of be mindful of, and I think that just sort of to understand, I think that also goes into like kind of learning to tune into yourself, right? Like we don't have to be this thing or this way of being that continues to always be vibrating the same frequency.
Yeah.
Right? Like we can shift, and we can shift again and then shift again.
And it's natural to shift.
Right.
It is.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like everything in nature is constantly going through periods of expansion and then retraction. And so I think to, again, also be respectful of your own rhythms is helpful.
Yeah. It all goes back to just a deeper, more conscious connection with yourself, right? And
Definitely.
respecting that.
Definitely.
This is awesome. Thank you so much for talking to us. Before we wrap, I just wanted to give you the opportunity to tell people how they can reach you if they're interested in a tarot reading.
Definitely. Well, so on Instagram, my handle for tarot is Luminous Palm. So LUMINOUS_PALM. And then for painting, it's Caris R, which is CARISR. And then through my Instagram, there's a link to my website. And the website doesn't have like a very readily like described. It's a more complicated name, so it's best to just go through the Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll keep that in the show notes too,
Yeah.
so people can find it.
Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, thank
This
you.
was such an awesome conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening, and we're excited to bring you more episodes.
Go find her, you'll love her.
Music for Woo New is composed by Adam Miller.